Nosferatu!
Yep, it sure is. The show seems to love incorporating Friedrich Gustav Maximilian Schreck, the actor who played the vampire Count Orlok in the epic silent horror movie called
Eine Symphonie des Grauens.
basically Nosferatu, a symphony of horror from 1922, widely regarded as the first vampire film ever. Although its adaptation from the source novel Dracula was a bit loose, the novel writer Bram Stoker's wife Florence Balcom still decided to file a legal dispute with the makers of the movie as it was unofficial, and for whatever amount of inspiration it carried from the book, it was unauthorized. Due to this, Nosferatu was nearly lost because the court had ordered all of the copies of the movie to be destroyed. But glad we are that it somehow made it and has completed exactly 101 years at the time of me making this video. Okay, that's all good history, but what is he doing in SpongeBob? Well, the reasons vary, but in the context of the show, he's there because he's the night shift manager at Krusty Krab. Other than his well-known cameo in the scene of the season 2 episode Graveyard Shift, where he turns out to be the one who'd been flickering the lights, he's actually made a number of appearances, so let's look at them.
Hey, boss! Can this little fella here take over my shift tonight? There's a pet for people who like to run and one for people who don't. A pet for folks who avoid the sun. Nosferatu! Nosferatu, proceed. What's happening?
We have to get you to Dr. Calamari right away.
In fact, the creepy arms of this creature have made their reach even to the Patrick Star Show, Camp Coral, and also the Nintendo DS game called SpongeBob Truth or Square. SpongeBob in a way has really been helping to keep this classic character fresh in the memory of the audience. Yummer. Apologies if that came through as a jump scare. It wasn't meant to be one. This unsettling character was found by a couple of SpongeBob art collectors while hunting through the sprite sheets of the Flash game SpongeBob Save the Day on the Nick website in search for anything preserved in the archives. And preserved there was. Nobody knew what that thing is and why is it even there in the sprite sheets, because it's not in the game. Of course, leading to ideas linking it with other things in the game and the sprite sheets like these can socks, this tone suit of Sandy, etc. And honestly, linking this with this was a bit horrifying. But that's okay because the mystery now is pretty much closed. As it turned out, the sprite was a 10-year-old 3D character model, which the developers forgot to take out of the game, since it was only intended to be a placeholder and a little in-joke amongst the internal teams in the department, and was not supposed to be a part of the final product. Well, thanks for the nightmares, guys. Now we hope to see Yummer in some future project as a character that we're supposed to see.
Bye, Squidward.
SpongeBob likes Squidward. I almost said that in reverse. Well, of course that can't be true. Squidward doesn't like anyone. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit. But SpongeBob liking Squidward? Yes, considering SpongeBob likes everything and everyone under the sun. Oh, you mean like? Well, it's like been noticed in some of the episodes that SpongeBob says certain things that indicate he is interested in Squidward. Well, yeah, let's have a look at this from season 8 episode Are You Happy Now?
Wonderful! My happiest memory!
He's so handsome.
Talking about handsome Squidward, in the season 5 episode The Two Faces of Squidward, just look at these bits.
Just remember, Squidward, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Squidward!
SpongeBob?
You're back! Oh, Squidward, I love you no matter how many times we smash your face.
I almost wish that meant something.
Okay, so far it's still fine. I mean, he's saying it in front of Squidward, which is okay. We compliment people in social life, that's normal, right? But check the scene out from the season 5 episode 20,000 Parties Under the Sea.
So long, lad. Make me lots of money.
Bye, Squidward. Bye, Mr. Krabs. Bye, Squidward.
You said bye, Squidward, twice.
I like Squidward.
What more does a fan theory need to be born? Lost MTV video. In mid-2000s, MTV2 came up with a project called Video Mods, which took game characters and gave them their own little music video. It had 2 seasons with 6 episodes in total. Each episode would have multiple shows broadcasting these videos put together from the video games. And as per the schedule, in the episode that aired on July 29th, 2005, the last project that broadcasted was of SpongeBob, for which they took footages from the game Lights Camera Pans. The name of the song was All the Small Things by the American rock band Blink-182. The thing is though that people did remember watching it around the time, but somehow it just couldn't be found on the internet. You know, as it was one of those rare things from the 2000s. That, however, was until a fine day when YouTuber Mary Dan uploaded it after stumbling upon it in one of her 2005 compilation tapes. So yeah, there you go, your lost media found. But if you rather prefer the chaos around lost media, then the silence that follows is discovery that just to make you feel better, the video Mary Dan uploaded didn't have like the first couple of seconds of the music video, as she was watching VH1's 40 most awesomely bad dirty songs of the time. So you can consider those initial few seconds of the music video to still be lost and oh wait. You know what? Never mind.
I've always sort of liked you.
Squidward doesn't hate his neighbors. Okay, so we're here now. It's important for the makers of a show to make sure that the personality of each character is very much clear in the audience's head. Like you won't expect anything smart coming out of this guy or something silly coming out of this one. And when it does, it's either hilarious or alerting. Like how Squidward is always shown as someone who'd not ever care less and is very much self-centered, always annoyed and happy in its own world. But when he breaks character, it's nothing but heartwarming. I mean, just check out this final scene from the season 5 episode Pizza Delivery, where he very maturely deals with a difficult customer who deeply hurt SpongeBob. We have many such instances to refer, where Squidward seems to only want good for people in the end, only in the veil of sternness. Almost like some boy genius visiting outer space to fight the aliens for his sister, who he's conditioned us to believe he absolutely hates. Apparently not really, as when she's not around, he misses her so much that he decides to hire Okay, let's get back down to the Bikini Bottom. Remember when we talked about the season 2 episode Graveyard Shift? Just seconds before the Nosferatu revelation, we hear Squidward say these golden words.
SpongeBob, no matter what I've said, I've always sort of liked you.
Also in the season 3 episode, Squidward in fact thinks of SpongeBob a genius as Einstein for discovering fire. Such a different appreciating side of Squidward coming out in this episode, even if that's for a short while. But check out the season 4 episode Krusty Tars, where while having much fun at the Krusty Tar Hotel, Squidward lets SpongeBob in on it as well. That is nice, ain't it? Maybe Squidward is not annoyed all the time. This entry is just to theorize the possibility that Squidward is maybe like one of these characters who are something they don't want to look like and are not that bad in real after all. Understandable, right? I guess we all have a Squidward inside of us.
Maybe it's the way you're dressed.
Sans. Now what does Sans have to do with SpongeBob? It doesn't. Honestly, it has to do with Patrick rather. Come on, they don't look similar in any way, shape or form. And that's right, they don't. They just sound similar. No way. Okay, you know what? Just listen to this. And now this.
Maybe it's the way you're dressed.
How in the world are they? Oh wait.
Maybe it's the way you're dressed. Maybe it
Makes no sense.
این داستان
SpongeBob in Tehran. This tier also has SpongeBob going to a place, and this time is Tehran in Iran. This is a Persian SpongeBob bootleg movie which showed up in 2017, and though it didn't get the permission from Nick to dub, it was released with an unofficial Persian dub. No, there is no English dub yet, only the English subtitles that were manually added to the movie on YouTube, and they are very well done. Outside of YouTube though, the movie is not streamable anywhere. I won't spoil it for you because I cannot, as the movie ends bit abruptly around the 43-minute mark, leaving us wanting more, mostly cause, like SpongeBob in China, it's pretty good. Internet seems to be loving it as well. Although not perfect, the production quality is not bad, and despite it switches from 3D animation to certain snip right out of the series without a warning, it's worth a watch.
Mother Pearl!
Mr. Krabs killed Pearl's mom. Let's talk about this guy again. We talked about him a bit in the earlier tier. No wonder, I guess, cause he's officially now known as the SpongeBob guy.
Guess I'm the SpongeBob guy now.
So Alex Bale, a filmmaker or YouTuber, has been making these cool videos with believable fan theories one after the other. And this entry refers to something he talked about in the 4th installment in the series, where he tackles multiple age-old questions in the Bikini Bottom universe. And he has this one theory called the evolution theory, using which he undoes it all. So he starts by taking us through the prehistoric Bikini Bottom to prove how the Bikini Bottom creatures couldn't be mutations of the Bikini adultesses, as that happened millions of years after what we see in the episodes like SB-129 and where we see the characters still in pretty evolved forms. He moves on drawing our attention towards these weird references in the season 3 episode called Krusty Krab training video to piece together the possibility of a war where Mr. Krabs killed this whale. A whale is what he killed. A whale is what Pearl is. You see what he's saying?
Mother Pearl!
Yeah. Skin theory. Skin theory is, well, yeah, we do call it skin theory, but looks like the word theory shouldn't even be there, because it always appears as the writers have been literally shoving it in our faces, almost wanting us to think how the creatures of Bikini Bottom wear certain skin that makes them look something they're not, like hair. And how about this one? And at times there even are multiple layers of skins, making us wonder where after all does it all end and who they actually are. Sort of reminds me of this unsettling YouTube video, which is by the way also a part of dark YouTube Iceberg, but anyways. There are just too many examples, so let me just show you a couple of my favorite ones.
What can I get you boys?
What are you looking at? Those.
You checked out of the hospital this morning.
Here's the bill.
You mean I'm awake?
Well, you guys be the judge.
My name's Steve Hillenberg.
Stephen was alive and camcorder was in production. This entry kind of takes us back to the tier 1 where we discussed the controversy with camcorder SpongeBob Under Years. Basically, after the passing of SpongeBob's creator Stephan Hillenberg, when a show called Camp Coral came out, it faced much criticism by the fans, cause for all the reasons aside, it seemed like something that Stephan would never approve. Why? Cause he mentioned it a couple of times that a SpongeBob Baby spin-off is not what he sees happening. Even until that point, things were like, okay, audience was frustrated, sure, but soon confusion fell down on the situation when this Camp Coral short leaked, namely, Am Archie Knew to Leave. This short, that was based off of the series, displayed a credit of Stephan Hillenberg being the creator of the show, about which, when asked, Vincent Paul Weller tried to explain over Twitter how Stephan was indeed aware about the prequel being developed. It was just very unfortunate that he couldn't get to see it. While going by how the show turned out with the fans, they're not sure if he would have watched it a lot anyway. But that being said, it's worth mentioning that things are pretty slippery with this one, and nothing is known for sure as to how much Stephan was actually involved with Camp Coral, if at all. Gary is smart. SpongeBob's pet Gary may not just be a filler character that this show wants us to perceive him as he seems behind the scenes, maybe he's not as dumb as some of the other characters in the show may seem, as despite having no fingers,
Excuse me, darling.
we see how he can tie the shoelaces in the season 2 episode Your Shoes Untied, and how although all he can say is he seemed to be able to read the English words just fine, as we saw in the season 3 episode Rockabye by Valve. Actually, more than just smart, people have pointed out moments that depict how he maybe isn't even a snail to begin with, because in the season 5 episode Fungus Among Us, Gary turns out to be the only bikini bottom creature immune to virus. So maybe he after all is not just a snail on the inside. In fact, in multiple episodes we get to literally see the inside of the body of the snail, and it's different every time. Why? All this and more have been making the fans think of him as some alien with supernatural abilities to get things done and morph in ways beyond Bikini Bottom's scope. This particular entry is one that can keep on going with such examples, so not sure what else to speak on this. How about I speak about this snail speaking in the season 1 episode Sleepy Time? Okay, it was a dream, but I never dreamt of my dog talking to me. Some people even go as far as saying that in the episode Sleepy Time, what we are looking at is actually the true form of Gary, and the snail form is just a disguise he likes to keep in Bikini Bottom for some reason. Okay, let that be the closer.
Hey, is that my patty?
SpongeBob 4D. I love it when certain pop culture icon comes out in ways that's larger than life, like Walter White bobblehead that was made to crash down to Earth from up above the stratosphere, or NASA beaming Beatles' song across the universe, literally across the universe. But that's a way up above for sea sponges, especially in this Iceberg video, where we are heading towards the bottom. Also, since SpongeBob would be too square for a bobblehead and probably shouldn't be sent out in space, as we need him here on Earth more. How about an amusement park ride based on it? Yes sir, SpongeBob 4D, a simulator ride in which riders sit in a 3D theater on chairs with inbuilt motion functionality as the ride proceeds. So basically in this ride, SpongeBob is after Patrick, who has a pickle which SpongeBob needs to complete a Krabby Patty for a customer. It can be found in many theme parks and aquariums around the world. The chair in this amusement ride also incorporates various effects, all the way from the simple ones like smoke, scents, water, wind, to the more aggressive ones as air blasts, like ticklers, vibrations, strobe lighting. All this combined makes it a 4D experience, hence SpongeBob 4D. However, some versions of the ride don't have these effects built in and should just be called SpongeBob 3D, which can be experienced from the comfort of your home sitting right here on YouTube itself, like I did yesterday.
You're talking about girls, right?
Midlife Crustacean. Yes, banned episodes, of course. That's how we know a series is famous, I guess. And Midlife Crustacean is an episode which would have surprised us more had it not been banned. I mean, keeping a panty raid in the episode, I guess you'll agree would surely cause at least a bit of issues, you know. And it's not even a quick joke that lasts for a second. It is a full sequence, in fact kind of a main event that leads to the climax of the episode. How did these silly, innocent looking sea creatures decide to commit an indecent act as such, you might wonder? Well, it's just one of the many activities that SpongeBob and Patrick executes during their big night out in this episode. Because, you know, that's what the cool folks do. And Mr. Krabs, facing a midlife crisis, is inclined to join them no matter how silly they may seem. Because anything to feel young, right? None of the other activities they do in the episode are anyway close to a panty raid, however. In fact, most of them are actually stuff for way too young of a person. Maybe more suitable for
babies.
Not babies.
Mr. Krabs, however, waits hoping that eventually he will start
Feeling it, 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 feeling it.
But finally, when he decides to leave these late night adventures, that is when Patrick reveals what their next big plan is going to be. The
panty raid.
And if that was not enough, the characters repeat the term back and forth a couple of times.
The panty raid.
Followed by them sneaking into a house to steal some panties, which turn out to be the ones that belong to Mr. Krabs' mom.
What are you doing with my bloomers?
I guess we're gonna have to stop pretending to be surprised by his banya.
I've discovered this coffee.
Patrick and Gary are cousins. Who said it's only shipping that's around? Fans notice everything, and other relationships get noted as well. And this is not even a theory. It doesn't even require to be noticed. It's literally put out very much clearly in this episode, Rule of Thumb, from the season 4 of the show. How Patrick and Gary are actually cousins. There is no maybe there. And although it doesn't go with the theory that Gary is smart, because, well, but just stay with me. Even though the only way to go over this entry is to spoil this episode completely, let's do that anyway. So in Rule of Thumb, Patrick gets visited by the royal ministry claiming to have uncovered a family tree, which depicts that Patrick is actually the descendant of one King Amoeba. Patrick, being King Amoeba's great-great-grandson, is now the king. That is well until the end of the episode, when removing the stain from the family tree reveals how the true king is actually Gary, in the process clearly showing how Gary and Patrick are related. So this is how it goes. The King Amoeba and Amoeba married Queen Mildew, a fish. Their daughter Princess Tulsa, a fish, married another fish, Yorick, and gave birth to Mutaket, a starfish. Mutaket married another sea star, Billy Bobstar, which somehow resulted in one of their childs being a sea sluggo. The other child was a starfish though, named Herbstar, who married Margie, and those two starfishes gave birth to SpongeBob's best friend Patrick Star, and his elder sister Sam Star, of course. Sluggo's child, on the other hand, beneath the coffee stain, turns out to be Gary, a snail, making him the first cousin of Patrick as per the sea star tree. So, you see this here? Yeah. Only one question. If the royal ministry had figured out that it's Gary beneath the stain, meaning he'd already removed the stain to see what's beneath it, how in the Bikini Bottom did the stain come back again? Am I making sense? Something for another video, I guess.
What are you, crazy? This is your show, right?
Intertidal Zone. We know this thesis called the origin of species, but do we know what the origin of the Bikini Bottom species is? If you ever find that in your question paper, know that you have to write the Intertidal Zone. This unpublished educational comic book by Stephan was really the set of building blocks that was to turn into SpongeBob SquarePants, as the sea creatures illustrated by Stephan in the book were literally what the Bikini Bottom characters were based off. The primary reason for the comic when Stephan designed it in 1984 was to teach children of different sea creatures, as he was a marine science educator at the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California, then known as Orange County Marine Institute. Stephan was asked by the director there to come up with a comic about tide pool ecology, which led him to create this masterpiece where he designed invertebrate sea creatures from the tide pools in Southern California. Fast forward a few years, Stephan is at California Institute of Arts, where he creates a short film called Wormholes as part of his thesis. Wormholes screened at Ottawa Film Festival in 1992, where the American animator Joe Murray saw it and was impressed more than enough to approach Stephan in the lobby of Ottawa Film Festival itself and offer him the dream job of working with him as a director of his coming animation series Rocko's Modern Life. It was while working on the last season of Rocko's Modern Life that the comic book Intertidal Zone came back to Stephan's life miraculously. Because on one of those days, when Stephan was talking to the American writer Martin Olson, Stephan expressed how he lacked such an idea of a show like Rocko's Modern Life in his life. While responding to that, Martin saw Stephan's Intertidal Zone that Stephan happened to have on him, a comic book that he had created back in the Ocean Institute, which Martin saw and went,
"What are you, crazy? This is your show right here,"
suggesting him to develop the Intertidal Zone into an animated series. Little did Stephan know that back in Marine Institute, what was intended to be educational to children would rather turn out to be an endless stream of entertainment for not just kids, but pretty much people of all ages all over the world.
The bottom of Bikini Bottom.
Bikini Bottom Mysteries. Bikini Bottom Mysteries exists probably due to the various fan theories that we've been talking about. It may not immediately feel to be, but as the sources say, it is a parody of such supposed conspiracies. First released on Facebook and the official SpongeBob YouTube channel in 2018, this web series has produced 3 seasons full of shorts, where an anonymous narrator covers the mysteries that surround the residents of the Bikini Bottom, claiming to get to the bottom of the Bikini Bottom. Deals with one fish in each episode, pointing out its peculiarities and summarizing it all near the end of the short, post which we get a little bonus bit to ponder over as well, at the end of each episode with a quote,
"If the pineapple fits, live in it."
It's also interesting to point out how a series made primarily to tell aloud the flaws in the show have its own errors too. Maybe put in there on purpose, not sure, but yeah, there are a few. Like one in the episode 1 itself, where the incidental 27 is mistaken for a woman, a spelling error in the episode 12, etc. Yeah, intentional I guess, who knows. If not all of the oddities, perhaps ones like some episodes missing the bonus mystery in the end, and episode 21 only been posted on Facebook and not on YouTube. All that being said, it's a nice series which one can finish in one single sitting. SpongeBoy Ahoy. Have you seen SpongeBoy Ahoy? I bet you have. This is SpongeBoy Ahoy. Or at least it would have been had the name not been changed. You know, there are always these beta names to the characters and all. In fact, not only the character SpongeBob, but the show itself was initially planned to be called SpongeBoy Ahoy. However, it was changed to stay clear of the copyright issues, and so SpongeBob had to take the lead. That is also how we lost the opportunity to see 6 extra holes on the face of the sponge, as SpongeBoy had total 13. Since SpongeBoy was a prototype of the modern day SpongeBob, there sure are other differences as well. Like SpongeBoy's hat being red, blue, green, his shoes being much pointier, just like the hat actually. And if you see what I'm saying, he seems sillier in appearance than SpongeBob. I mean, yeah, SpongeBob as well may commit goof-ups, but he doesn't look half as goofy as SpongeBoy. You know, I don't know, but you know what's interesting? They say that the reason the name was changed was cause SpongeBoy had already been taken by some mop company, but you won't find anything about such a mop company that ever existed. So what was that all about? As a matter of fact, when I initially read through this iceberg and did a mild research, even before posting the first tier, I did try looking up the so-called mop brand and thought to myself that someone can certainly make a video on this because I didn't find a trace. And guess what? Someone was making a video on this. Oh, and a great one. Only about 3 days earlier, Kid Leaves Tube would make this awesome upload, and no, it wasn't a mop, just in case you're wondering. But well, be it a mop, a bizarre superhero's friend, or a pencil, it all gave us SpongeBob, and he's here still. All from the laughter, the memories of growing old, singing that wild intro since long ago, to scrutinizing stuff about it in these iceberg videos. And we shall continue to do so in the deeper, darker tier 4.